Hi, I'm Amy.
And I'm Kirsty.
And this is our podcast covering the highs, lows, and realities of parenting a child with neurodiversity.
Each week we'll be sharing updates from our lives and hearing from a variety of guests about their advice and experiences.
This is Love Needs No Words. Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Love Needs No Words. Today we are joined by Stefanie Hohl, who is passionate about spreading the news that movement can help children with special needs learn to read, and has developed an engaging and effective programme called ABC See Hear Do. All the way from America. Steph, welcome and thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks so much for having me.
So let's just start by, if you could just explain a bit more about ABC See Hear Do and sort of why it was important for you to develop this program.
Yeah, so I actually developed this program for my youngest son. So I have 5 children, and I had taught the first 4 to read with, kind of traditional methods, and it went okay, not great. And by the time I got to my youngest child, he was just a whole new ball game. Like, he wouldn't sit still, he wouldn't listen, he was super defiant. And I just was dreading teaching him to read with the methods I'd used with my older kids, because I just knew they weren't going to work. It was going to be a huge fight, lots of frustration, and I just didn't want that. And so I was actually getting my master's of education in curriculum and instruction, and so I kind of dove into research on how to, like, best practices for teaching kids to read, because I really wanted to find something that used movement, because in my research, like, I knew that was the best way kids learn. And I had seen a program that used movement in like a classroom setting, but it wasn't specifically designed for home use, like for a parent to use one-on-one with a child. And at the time I was also writing books for children. And so it's kind of like all my worlds collided. And I decided to create my own method of teaching reading using, what I had learned to use movement and how to break it down into really small, easy steps. And I tried it with my son. I think it was right around his 4th birthday. And it clicked for him so fast.
Wow.
And I was like, this is magical, and I have to share this with other parents, because I wanted that for other kids like my son, where I just knew it was going to be such a struggle. I was like, there has to be a better way. And so that's what really drove me to develop it. And that's what's been most rewarding, like seeing it actually help kids learn to read. And, it's just awesome.
That's amazing. I mean, there's been a lot of chat in the UK at the moment, especially about how the curriculum has to change, because it's just not working for children, getting them to sit still, whether that's on the carpet or whether that's at desk, because it's just being proved to not work for every child. And Kirsty and I know firsthand the benefit of our children being able to have that movement break at school. It's been life-changing for them. And Alex has got an occupational therapist on a Monday now, and she talks a lot about how movement can also encourage speech as well. It's all linked. So how did you get started? Like, how did you come up with the different ideas, and I guess how does your program work?
Yeah, so research shows that adding any type of movement to learning is beneficial, but if your movement can link directly to what they're learning, it helps even more. And so I took each letter of the alphabet and I gave it an animal and an action to go with it. So for example, the letter C is a cat, and you curl your hands like claws and scratch and say, k. And then the A is an ant, and you say, ah! That's everyone's favorite. They get to scream. And then like T is turtle, and you say t, t, t. And so it doesn't go in alphabetical order, because it goes in order of like easiness to read, because after a child learns, and it's divided into groups of 4 letters. So after a child learns C, A, T, and M, they can already read 2 words, cat and mat. And so it's kind of breaking it down to, like, because learning 26 letters and then learning to read, like, it's so complex and it's so overwhelming for a lot of kids. And so I wanted to break it down into like really easy chunks where it's like, you learn these 4 sounds and you can read 2 words. And to kids, that's like really rewarding to them.
Yeah.
To like be able to say, oh, I can actually read this word and it makes them want to keep learning and keep doing it. So it's kind of like a really big confidence builder as well. So there's 7 levels of books in my program. There's the uppercase letters, lowercase, then blended beginning sounds, blended ending sounds, long vowels, sight words, and irregular sounds, like all the weird things English does. And then we have a lot of supplemental materials just to make it more fun, like coloring books, writing practice, curriculum books, flashcards, and early readers. So it's really easy to like pick and choose what your child needs or what they like, and it is just really progressive, building these skills with a really strong foundation.
I think it's very similar to phonics here. I don't know what they use in the US, but here they have, again, it's that whole, they've got a very particular way that they teach children how to learn letters. And it isn't the way that, for example, Alex, a speech and language therapist, says Alex will learn. It's very different the way that
Yeah,
their mind works. So it's really great that you were able to create something that will work for so many.
a lot of speech language pathologists have actually started using my program because it really
Wow.
does help their speech students with the phonics and like being able to say the sounds. But yeah, it's because adding the movement, it uses a different part of their brain. And so it allows kids who maybe learn a little differently to access a different part of their brain that just works better for them. And so they're able to learn it and remember the information much better than if they're just, sitting at a desk and listening. So yeah, that's why it's so much more effective. And then when they're
Absolutely.
trying to read the words, that animal or monster is a hint underneath. So that also gives them a lot of confidence because if they forget, oh yeah, what sound did that letter make? There's the little animal in the action and they can do the action and be like, oh, right, right, right. That was t, or, whatever.
Oh, that's so good. Because all kids just love going around pretending to be different animals. So you've just like you've
That
just
is
hit it
true.
on the nose. It's so good. So what age do you kind of focus your program on? Like when would you say to start with it?
So our materials are for 0 to 8. So we have a board book version that's great for babies. I mean, I say start as young as possible just with those letter sounds. Obviously, they're not going to be ready to read words, but you can start those early literacy skills like from really young. I have a lot of parents tell me they'll be working on it with their 3 or 4 year old, and their 18-month-old will be doing all the hand motions and saying the sounds. Like they can totally pick up on that. Because parents spend a lot of times reading alphabet books to kids for the letter name, but really they need to know the letter sound to read. Um, so I definitely recommend starting with the young babies, just reinforcing that's an A, it says ah, reinforcing those sounds because that's what they really need to read. And then the actual reading program, like our first book says ages 2 to 5, where again, the 2 year old is going to be learning the sounds. They're not going to be ready to blend them together, but they can start learning to recognize all the letters and what sound they make. Usually around 3 or 4, children are developmentally ready to start blending them together. Sometimes it's a little longer. I mean, every child develops so differently.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then by the time you're done with the program in level 7, that's usually like in the United States, like a second grade reading level. So then they'd be ready for, I mean, they'd be a proficient reader.
It's lovely that you've got a program that kind of sees it through to that age. It doesn't just
Mhm.
stop. It's like
Yeah.
they're now at a really competent level, which is good. Going back a bit to kind of how educational settings are, I mean, as I say here, there's a lot of chat around things having to change, especially because more SEND children are going to be in the classroom. Is that something that's happening in the US as well?
Yeah, there's a lot of chatter about the science of reading and switching curriculums to stick to that instead of like the whole language approach. I think there's still a lot of controversy about it here in the States, but I think people are realizing like, yeah, we need to make changes because what we're doing obviously isn't working.
Mm.
And I think I think we're so much more aware now of different kids' needs and like how they learn. Um, and so like we have to adapt. We have to change the way we teach and really teach to what will work for them, you know?
And do you go into schools and teach? what and teach your program, or are you specifically for parents outside of like educational settings?
I do have a lot of preschool, kindergarten teachers, and like reading specialists use my program. I've started doing professional development for teachers. I'm happy to go into schools and teach how to use my program. I would love to do that actually.
Oh,
But yeah, mostly I've done more like webinar type professional development things.
I think it'd be brilliant. I just think if you've got somebody that's created something for children that do find sitting in a classroom-based setting difficult,
Yeah.
why not try something and see if it works? So, I
Yeah.
hope you managed to get into some
Thank you.
schools out there, because it makes such a massive difference. We also have massive waiting lists here for like diagnosis for ASD and ADHD especially. What's the current situation like there with that sort of thing?
I think that's very similar here. I mean, I've heard from people it's like a year. I don't know what the waiting lists are like there, but yeah, and that can be frustrating too. Like if your child's struggling and you're trying to figure out what's going on, I know that can be a real challenge.
Mhm.
So, I mean, I would say, like, especially if your child is struggling with reading, you can just try adding movement on your own at home and like seeing if that makes a difference and if they learn better that way or not. Um, so yeah, but I know it's hard for a lot of parents.
Yeah. So my son has a speech today. He started talking, well, I say talking, he started saying words in the summer, and we bought a trampoline,
Mm,
and there was loads of other aspects that made an impact, but I really do feel just jumping on the trampoline and singing songs, and his sister's too, so she's at that age where she's interested in everything. So just so much discussion and everything
mhm.
going on whilst he was moving. And like you say, it makes such a massive difference.
That's always one of my suggestions. Like if your child has to practice spelling words or something like that, have
Yeah.
them be jumping on the trampoline while they're practicing it. It helps a lot. Research shows that adding movement will increase learning by 90%. It increases retention by 105%, and it increases engagement by 1,500%, which is just mind blowing. I mean,
That is
obviously,
mind
because
blowing.
yeah, obviously, if you're adding movement, kids are going to be paying attention because they're more, they're focused on what they're doing because it's more fun, it's more interesting. And often kids, like especially kids that are maybe neurodivergent, a lot of times they're focusing so hard on sitting still and being quiet that they're not even listening to what the teacher's saying. And so it's just going over their head. But when you add that movement in, sometimes it just like frees up their brain to actually pay attention.
Mm,
Um, and so, I mean, that research is pretty impactful. Like 1,500%, that's no joke.
it's
That is,
incredible.
and the fact that it increases learning by 90%, I mean, like that's almost doubling the amount of learning that happens.
Wow.
Oh wait, that is more than doubling. Anyway, whatever. Math percentages.
It's a massive impact for sure, yeah. And the parents that you're working with, so are their children at school and they're doing it in their spare time, or are they doing it, are they homeschooling them, or is it a mixture of all of those
It's a
things?
mixture. I mean, I have a lot of homeschoolers that use my program, but there's a lot of parents that will just use it as a supplement on the side to whatever their child's doing in school, or parents that use it in the summer or they use it before school, like as a way to give their child a head start. And so it's all across the board.
And what is some of the positive comments you've had from parents so far?
Oh, so many. It's actually so fun to go read reviews on Amazon because it just warms my heart because
Oh,
learning to read, like it's such a huge thing in kids' lives
yeah.
and for so many people it's just that they're at this point of frustration where, nothing's working, nothing's clicking, and it's like, why isn't my child getting this? Or the parents are so worried that they're behind or whatever, and they'll write comments like, we bought this book just on a whim, hoping it would help because we'd tried everything else, and within a week my child had read every word in the book. Like, just
Wow.
like really, it's amazing. Like, it really is magical if it works for your child and it just clicks. Like, they just take off with it. So
That's so great.
I just love hearing those stories.
And it's perfect because it's Christmas coming up,
Yeah.
Stephanie. So if people are
Yes.
looking for a stocking filler or a present, it's a great one, because also over the holidays children are more relaxed. So they're more willing to give these things a go, right?
Yeah, and like I said, it's all about making it fun. So it should never feel like, oh, I have to do schoolwork. It's always like, hey, let's spend a couple of minutes being silly and laughing and we have tons of ideas on our website for games you can play and crafts and sensory activities. So it's all about making it fun and engaging.
And when you started this, obviously you wanted to make a big impact on your son. Did you ever think that it would get to this stage where,
No, I
people are
had
buying
no
it off
idea.
Amazon and telling you how amazing it is?
I had no idea. I was actually only planning on publishing the first book, and I thought that would be it. Um, but I had such a good response and people asking for more. Like, yeah, well, I started when he was 4, he's almost 13. So it's been 9 years.
Wow.
And it's just grown so much and it's been really amazing.
So for those listening, that want a few practical tips and activities to do to support early reading skills, obviously everything is in your book, and in your program, but have you got any sort of just little ones
Yeah,
that you can give for parents?
yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, obviously you don't have to buy my books. You can do this with whatever you're doing at home with your child. Just try to add in movement. So, if you have alphabet flashcards and you're just going through those, try to think of a way to add movement in. For example, you can like tape them on the floor and have them hop from card to card and say the sound as they land on it. Or one of my son's favorites was always taping the flashcards up on the wall and he would shoot them with a Nerf gun. Whichever one he hit, he'd have to say that sound. Um, so doing things like that, anytime you can think of how can I add movement to this, that's great. The other thing I always suggest to parents is to kind of create a literacy rich environment where it just becomes part of your daily life. So if you're driving down the street and you see a sign, say to your child, oh, what's that letter on the sign? And what sound does that make? Or if you're looking at a cereal box, say, oh, look, that's an S. What sound did that make? Where it's just part of your life. And so you're
Mhm.
just constantly it's just constant reinforcement, and that's going to help your child a lot too. And then my last piece of advice for parents is to not get frustrated yourself. Like if you're frustrated, it's time to take a step back and like rethink like where is my child at and why isn't this working and what can I do instead to like meet them where they are. So I think as parents we often expect our kids to just do like what we think is the best way to teach them. But sometimes that's not what they need. And so if you can kind of take a step back, take a breather, and come up with a new plan, I think that helps a lot. And then just also remember kids develop so differently. And often I'll have parents say, "Oh, I tried your book and they just weren't into it." Then I said, "That's fine. Just put it away. Wait a month, 2 months, 3 months, pull it back out and see." And then suddenly they're like, "Oh, now they love it." And so sometimes they're just not quite there yet, and you need to wait another month or two or, whatever. Because every child does develop differently, and especially when they're on the younger side, they might just not be ready yet.
Yeah. Like you say, you've got to give them time, and they're all so different. And
Hmm.
that's really good advice, because I think it's so easy to just give up, especially when it comes to
Hmm.
reading and writing and all of those things, because there's also an element of your child gets home, you feel like, this should just be a place of fun. But like you say, if you make it fun, then it
Yeah,
doesn't feel like learning anymore. That was
right.
also really good advice about that I've been given. And since having Alex, and I'm sure Kirsty would say the same, like since having him, my whole perspective had to change. I had to learn to teach him in a completely different way. And so, like you used all those brilliant examples, one of mine was he was obsessed with stones. So he wasn't interested in toys. So when he put the stones in the water, I would go 1, 2,
Yeah,
and we'd make that into like a counting game.
yeah.
Or it's like you say, you just have to kind of think outside the box, and it can be anything you're doing. And then when
Yeah.
you do it like that, that feels less stressful and anxiety fueling for
Right.
you, because it's just
Right.
part of your day.
Right. It doesn't need to be this like big hurrah that you have to put all this time and effort into. It can be exactly like you said, really simple things where you're just bringing it up and playing and
Yeah, making it part of your day rather than making it structured,
right.
boring lesson.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
And I think there'll be so many parents listening, like me, that aren't the most creative. And so I'm that sort of mum where I'm like, oh, the sort of Play-Doh, etc., that can stay at school. But yeah, I think what's useful is having that list on your website where it just prompts you to think of
Yeah,
things if it
exactly.
doesn't come naturally. So if there are any parents listening that are not just interested in your program, but kind of interested in the way you go about things, where's the best place to start?
Well, our website, abccheredo.com, we offer tons of free resources on there, and it kind of explains the program. And like, I mean, if you don't want the program, you can kind of get a sense of like how you could add that to your own whatever you're doing. So that's a great place to start. And then also, like, you don't need to be overwhelmed by this. Like, even if you just add one small movement activity a week, that's a great place to start. If you say, this week we're going to practice 3-letter sounds and we're going to add a movement to each one, and that's it. Just keeping it small and simple, but something that you'll actually do and something that's not going to overwhelm you. And then it will slowly feel more natural, and it will like come to you more naturally, I think.
And you said about Amazon there. So what do you sell on Amazon?
Oh yeah, so everything's available on Amazon or on my website, or you can order from an independent bookstore. The only thing with people in the UK is you can get all the books easily. The flashcards are a little trickier because the shipping is so expensive. So,
Okay.
because I do have to ship the flashcards from the US. In the UK, Amazon and the independent bookstores, like they'll print it there, which is why the shipping is not too expensive. So you can get them. It's just pricier for the shipping, just for the flashcards. But the books are all totally available.
Brilliant. That's fab. And finally, what would be your advice for parents, I guess, that are listening, that are at the start of their journey with sort of reading and sort of don't know where to start with it?
So like I said before, starting with the letter sounds, that's most important. You want a really, really strong base in phonics. Obviously, reading to your child a lot is always great. But really, they need those early skills of being able to see a letter and know what sound it makes. So, I mean, if that's like the most important thing to start with. Once they know that, then they can start blending those together in like a CVC word, a consonant vowel consonant word, like cat or dog. And even then, like you want your child to be able to read those like quickly before moving on to harder words. Because that is like the base of the majority of words in our language. And so if they have a strong foundation there, it's going to help them much later with the harder words.
And this might be a really silly question, but how do you know if your child can read?
Well, again, that's actually not a silly question because that's a complicated question because there's very many different degrees of reading. Like a child can read like I saw Bob, but can they read a novel? Like no. And so I mean that's also kind of just understanding where your child is at. Like by the time if they finish our program, they should be able to read, like a regular chapter book with lots of words. And so reading is a progression.
Yeah.
So yes, if your child can read those CVC words, yes, they can read. Are they done with their reading journey? No. They still have a long way to go.
Yeah. I think it's because there'll be people listening whose children are non-verbal, and I just think they just constantly surprise you with like how much they know and understand. So
Yeah, that
yeah,
situation is probably very different, where those children, some of them probably can read, but if they can't speak it, then you don't really
yeah,
have a way to know unless they have another way to communicate with you.
it's fascinating, isn't it?
It
Because
is.
like you
It's really,
say, you throw that movement in, and then it could change the dynamic completely with
yeah,
how much they're able to read. Yeah.
especially depending on like what parts of their brains are stronger or more developed, or it could make a huge difference. Yeah.
Have you got any children in your program with additional needs that you've seen a big impact with, or any parents that you're working with?
Yeah, there was one little boy who was born with speech delays, and his mom started using my program. And I mean, he was doing speech therapy too. I think his speech
Mm.
therapist started using it as well. And so he was 2, and he would do the motions. And I mean, he would try to make the sounds. He wasn't really making the sounds, but he was like connecting that that sound was supposed to go with that letter. And he actually progressed really quickly. Like he graduated from speech therapy when he was 4 and
Oh, wow.
was full on reading. I think he was on like level 4 of our books. Like he just loved it and was doing so well. And his mom really attributes it to using the movement, and that
Yeah.
really and kept him engaged and interested in it, and he wanted to do more. So yeah, it's pretty amazing.
It's amazing as well, because I think once the speech comes, that's also when you realize just how much they know,
Yeah.
because that's holding them back through for so much, that as soon as they're able to vocalize, it's like,
Hmm.
my gosh, wow, you actually knew more than I thought you
Yeah,
knew. Yeah.
that's so true.
Yeah, that's amazing. Oh, Stefanie, thank you so much for coming on the podcast and
Yeah.
talking to us about your program. And I'm sure there's many people listening that will be typing it in Amazon now and getting it for their children, having a look over Christmas. So yeah, we really appreciate your time, and thank you for creating a program for children that, like ours, find sitting still very difficult, because it's going to be making such a difference.
Yeah, thank you for having me. This was wonderful.